When you've reached the point of needing to reject the avoidant person, when you've recognized that the relationship cannot work because of their patterns and their inability to show up consistently, how you execute that rejection matters significantly, both for your own healing and for the lasting impact it has on them. There are two approaches to rejection: the emotional, reactive rejection that comes from a place of hurt and anger, where you tell them exactly how much they've hurt you, where you express your pain and your frustration, where you might beg them to change or attack them for their patterns before ultimately walking away, and the strategic, dignified rejection that plays the long game, that prioritizes your own healing and forward movement while creating the type of rejection that will haunt them far more than emotional displays ever could. The emotional rejection feels satisfying in the moment because it allows you to express all the feelings you've been holding, allows you to make them see your pain, allows you to have final word about what they did wrong. But emotional rejection actually serves the avoidance defensive narrative. It confirms their belief that you were too emotional, gives them something to point to as evidence of your instability, allows them to frame the ending as a result of your reaction rather than their patterns, and ultimately lets them off the hook because your emotional expression becomes the problem rather than their behavior. The strategic rejection, the rejection that plays the long game, operates differently. It comes from a place of calm clarity rather than emotional reactivity. It centers your dignity and your worth rather than centering your pain and their failures. It creates clean, firm ending that gives them nothing to work with, nothing to dismiss, nothing to use in their defensive narratives. It communicates through your composure and your finality that you've made decision from place of strength rather than from place of wound. And most importantly, strategic rejection sets in motion long-term consequences that compound over time rather than providing immediate catharsis that quickly fades. The avoidant might not feel the full impact of strategic rejection immediately, but as months and years pass, as they watch you thrive without them, as they encounter your complete unavailability, as they recognize the dignity with which you departed, the rejection will sink deeper and will create more lasting regret than any emotional confrontation ever could. Playing the long game means prioritizing outcomes over immediate satisfaction, means choosing the rejection strategy that serves your future self rather than your present hurt, means understanding that the most powerful rejection is the one that demonstrates your value through your actions rather than through your words. Why strategic rejection is more powerful than emotional rejection. Strategic rejection that plays the long game is significantly more powerful and more impactful on the avoidant person than emotional rejection, and understanding why this is true reveals both the psychology of the avoidant and the most effective way to protect yourself, while ensuring your departure creates maximum lasting effect. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it denies the avoidant the emotional reaction they're unconsciously expecting, and that would allow them to maintain their defensive narratives about the relationship and about you. The avoidant expects emotional reaction when you leave. They expect hurt, anger, tears, accusations, demands that they explain themselves or change. This expected emotional reaction serves their defensive system by confirming their narrative that you're too emotional, too needy, too invested in ways they couldn't match. Your emotional display becomes evidence that validates their withdrawal and their patterns. But strategic rejection denies them this validation. When you leave calmly, with dignity, without emotional display or dramatic confrontation, you deprive them of the evidence they were looking for. They cannot point to your emotional reaction as justification for their patterns. They cannot frame your departure as emotional overreaction. They cannot dismiss you as unstable or too invested. Your calm, strategic rejection forces them to confront that the problem was their patterns, not your emotional responses, because there's no emotional response to hide behind. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it demonstrates strength and self-worth that makes them question their assessment of you and their assumption that they held more power in the dynamic. Throughout the relationship, the avoidant likely perceived themselves as the less invested party, the one with more power, the one who could walk away more easily. They saw your investment and your emotional availability as weakness or dependency. But strategic rejection completely inverts this perception. By rejecting them calmly and finally, by walking away with dignity and without looking back, you demonstrate strength they didn't know you possessed. You prove that their assessment was wrong, that you're capable of choosing yourself over the relationship, that you have the power to walk away decisively. This demonstration of unexpected strength is far more impactful than emotional rejection because it forces them to recalibrate their entire understanding of who you are and what you're capable of, making them recognize they underestimated you and misjudged the power dynamic. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it leaves no opening for them to attempt reconciliation or to pull you back in through their typical strategies, creating finality that emotional rejection often lacks. Emotional rejection, despite its intensity, often leaves openings. If you leave while crying and expressing how much you love them, they know you still care deeply and might be open to reconciliation. If you leave while angry and attacking them, they know they still affect you intensely and might be able to apologize or explain their way back in. But strategic rejection that's calm and final leaves nothing to work with. You're not expressing ongoing love they could appeal to. You're not showing anger they could soothe. You're simply done, and your composure makes clear that your decision is final and non-negotiable. This finality is more powerful because it removes their typical escape routes and forces them to actually face permanent loss rather than temporary upset they might be able to repair. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it protects your dignity and your self-respect in ways that emotional rejection does not, ensuring you don't give them memories of you at your worst that they can use to diminish you. When you reject them emotionally, when you're crying and begging or angry and attacking, you create memories for them of you in disempowered states. These memories make it easier for them to dismiss you later, to focus on how you acted in your pain rather than on the patterns that caused that pain. But strategic rejection creates different memory. They remember you calm, composed, dignified, strong enough to walk away without falling apart. This memory is harder to dismiss and easier to respect. It's harder for them to devalue you when their last memory is of your strength rather than your pain. Protecting your dignity through strategic rejection serves you by ensuring you're not ashamed of how you handled the ending, and it serves the long game by ensuring they cannot easily diminish you in their memories. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it sets up dynamic where you're moving forward while they're stuck, processing what happened, creating diverging trajectories that compound the impact over time. Emotional rejection often keeps both people stuck for a period. You're stuck in your pain and anger. They're stuck in their defensive reactions to your pain and anger. But strategic rejection allows you to begin moving forward immediately because you're not carrying the additional weight of regret about how you handled the ending. You left with dignity, you made clean break, and now you can focus on healing and growth. Meanwhile, the avoidant is stuck trying to process your unexpected strength and your final departure. As time passes, the gap between your trajectories widens. You're healing and growing while they're still processing and regretting. This widening gap is what makes strategic rejection powerful in the long game. The impact grows over time rather than fading. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it creates mystery and uncertainty for the avoidant that keeps you in their mind far longer than emotional rejection would. Emotional rejection provides closure of a sort. They know you're hurt, they know you're angry, they understand your emotional state. But strategic rejection leaves questions. Why aren't you more upset? How are you so composed? Have you already moved on? Were you never as invested as they thought? These questions keep them thinking about you, analyzing your departure, trying to understand what happened. The mystery created by your composure is more psychologically engaging than the clarity of emotional pain would be. They cannot stop thinking about you because they cannot fully understand your calmness, and this ongoing preoccupation is exactly what makes strategic rejection powerful. Strategic rejection is more powerful because it's grounded in genuine self-respect and self-protection rather than in desire to hurt them or to make them feel what you felt, making it sustainable and authentic. Emotional rejection often comes from desire to hurt them back, to make them feel the pain they caused you, to punish them for their patterns. But this motivation is exhausting to maintain and often backfires because it keeps you emotionally entangled with them. Strategic rejection comes from different motivation: protecting yourself, honoring your worth, choosing your well-being over the relationship. This motivation is sustainable because it's about you, not about them, and it's more powerful because it's authentic. You're not performing strength you don't feel. You're actually making empowered choice to leave situation that doesn't serve you. The authenticity of strategic rejection makes it unshakable in ways that performed or reactive rejection never could be. The specific elements of rejection that create lasting impact. Strategic rejection that plays the long game includes specific elements and characteristics that work together to create lasting impact on the avoidant person while protecting your own healing and forward movement. Understanding these elements allows you to execute rejection in ways that serve both purposes: your freedom and their eventual recognition of what they lost. The first critical element is calm, composed delivery of your decision without excessive explanation, justification, or emotional display. When you reject the avoidant, your communication should be brief, clear, and calm. You're not interested in continuing the relationship. You've made your decision. You wish them well. That's sufficient. You don't need to explain all the ways they hurt you. You don't need to justify your decision with lengthy analysis of their patterns. You don't need to cry or yell or beg them to understand. Calm, brief communication of your final decision is more powerful than lengthy emotional explanation because it demonstrates that your decision is so clear and so final that it doesn't require defense or elaboration. The brevity denies them the detailed roadmap they might use to talk you out of your decision or to defend themselves against your accusations. The second critical element is complete implementation of no contact, without exceptions, without responding to their reach outs, without leaving any openings for continued engagement. Strategic rejection requires absolute follow-through. You don't respond to their messages. You don't engage with their attempts to talk. You don't make exceptions for special occasions or for their expressions of regret. You block them on social media or make your profiles private. You remove them from your life completely. This completeness is essential for playing the long game because any breach in no contact gives them hope, gives them opening to attempt to restore connection, and reduces the impact of your rejection. Complete no contact forces them to sit with the full weight of permanent loss without any relief or any opportunity to mitigate that loss through partial contact. The third critical element is visible forward movement with your life that they can observe from distance, demonstrating that you're thriving without them rather than suffering in their absence. While maintaining no contact, You continue living your life in visible ways, if you choose, pursuing your goals, spending time with friends, posting on social media about your activities and your growth, if that's natural for you. The key is that any information they receive about you shows you moving forward, being happy, being engaged with your life. This visible thriving is a powerful element of long game rejection because it proves you're fine without them, that losing them didn't break you, that you're capable of creating good life without their presence. This proof that you don't need them for your happiness is more impactful than any words you could say about not needing them. The fourth critical element is consistent maintenance of your dignity and your boundaries in any unavoidable encounters, treating them with polite distance, but not with warmth or openness that might suggest availability. If circumstances force you into proximity, shared social circles, mutual friends events, shared workplace, your behavior should be politely distant. You're civil, but not warm. You acknowledge them, but don't engage in meaningful conversation. You maintain your composure and your boundaries without being dramatic or obviously avoiding them. This consistent dignity in all interactions, this refusal to be pulled back into connection or to show them that you're still affected, reinforces the finality of your rejection while demonstrating that you've genuinely moved to a place where they're simply not significant anymore. The fifth critical element is refusal to provide closure or detailed explanation that would ease their discomfort or allow them to feel resolved about the ending. The avoidant might want closure conversation where they can understand what happened, where they can explain themselves, where they can reach some mutual understanding about the relationship's ending. Strategic rejection denies this closure. You don't owe them detailed explanation. You don't owe them opportunity to defend themselves. You don't owe them resolution that makes them feel better about what happened. The lack of closure keeps them stuck processing the loss, keeps them wondering, keeps the impact of your rejection active rather than allowing them to process it and move on. Playing the long game means understanding that their discomfort with lack of closure serves your purposes by ensuring they cannot easily dismiss or resolve the loss. The sixth critical element is absolute refusal to take them back or to give them another chance, regardless of what they say or promise, demonstrating through consistency that your decision is permanent. If they reach out apologizing, if they promise to change, if they express recognition of their patterns and claim they're ready to do better, strategic rejection means you don't engage. You don't test whether they're serious. You don't give them chance to prove they've changed. You maintain your boundary that the relationship is over permanently. This refusal to entertain reconciliation is crucial for long game because it's what creates the permanence that eventually becomes their deepest regret. If you're willing to reconsider, they maintain hope that they might get you back. If you're absolutely unwilling, they're forced to accept that they've truly lost you, and this acceptance is what creates the lasting impact. The seventh critical element is focus on your own healing and growth, rather than on monitoring their reactions or seeking information about how they're handling the rejection. Strategic rejection that plays the long game requires that you actually move forward with your life, rather than remaining focused on them and their response to your rejection. You're not checking their social media to see if they seem upset. You're not asking mutual friends how they're doing. You're not monitoring their life for signs that your rejection affected them. You're genuinely investing in yourself, in your healing, in your future. This genuine forward focus is what creates the authentic thriving that makes your rejection so powerful. If you're still focused on them, you're not actually free, and that lack of freedom will eventually show and will reduce the impact of your rejection. The eighth critical element is carrying yourself with confidence and self-worth that communicates you deserve better than what they offered, that you're not desperate or broken, but a strong and clear about your value. The energy you project matters. Strategic rejection means you embody someone who made empowered choice to leave situation that didn't serve them, someone who knows their worth and who requires partnership that honors that worth. This energy is more powerful than words because it's demonstrated through how you carry yourself, how you speak about the relationship, if you speak about it at all, how you show up in the world. When the avoidant perceives this energy of self-worth and empowerment, when they see that you know you deserve better than what they could provide, it challenges them more deeply than accusations about their failures ever could. How playing the long game protects you while maximizing their regret. Strategic rejection that plays the long game serves dual purpose. It protects your healing and your forward movement, while simultaneously creating the conditions that maximize the avoidant's eventual regret. Understanding how one approach serves both purposes reveals why this is optimal strategy for ending relationship with avoidant person. Playing the long game protects you by preventing you from remaining emotionally entangled with them through anger, hurt, or hope, allowing you to genuinely move forward rather than remaining stuck in the past. When you reject them emotionally, when you maintain contact to argue or to see if they'll change, when you focus on making them understand what they did wrong, you remain tied to them psychologically and emotionally. You're still organizing your emotional energy around them and your relationship with them. But strategic rejection that plays the long game cuts these ties. You make clean break and you focus on yourself. This allows your emotional energy to redirect toward your own life, your own growth, your own healing. You're not stuck in loops of anger or hurt or hope regarding them. You're free to actually process the relationship and move beyond it because you're not maintaining active engagement with them or with the ending. Playing the long game protects you by ensuring you don't compromise your dignity or give them ammunition to use against you in their defensive narratives or in their discussions with others. Every emotional outburst, every desperate plea, every angry attack gives the avoidant something to point to as evidence that you were the problem or that the relationship couldn't work because of your emotional instability. But strategic rejection gives them nothing to use against you. They cannot tell people you are crazy or desperate or cruel. They cannot point to your behavior at the end as justification for their patterns during the relationship. All they can say is that you ended things calmly and decisively. This protection of your reputation and your dignity serves you because it ensures that mutual friends, social circles, even your own memories of yourself are not tainted by behavior you're ashamed of. Playing the long game protects you by creating the clean break and the firm boundaries that allow your nervous system to regulate and your attachment system to disengage, which is essential for your healing. Continuing contact with the avoidant, maintaining emotional engagement with them through conflict or through hope for reconciliation, keeps your nervous system activated and keeps your attachment system engaged with them. This prevents healing because your system cannot settle when it's still in active relationship with the source of dysregulation. But strategic rejection creates the space and the separation your system needs to calm down, to recognize you're safe without them, to disengage the attachment and begin forming new patterns. This physiological and psychological disengagement is necessary for your healing and is only possible when you maintain firm boundaries and genuine distance. Playing the long game protects you by allowing you to maintain your self-respect and to avoid the shame and regret that often follows emotional rejection, ensuring you're proud of how you handled the ending rather than ashamed. Many people who reject partners emotionally later feel shame about how they acted in their pain, regret about things they said or did, embarrassment about how they behaved. This shame and regret add to the pain of the relationship ending and complicate the healing process. But when you reject someone strategically, when you handle the ending with dignity and composure, you have nothing to be ashamed of later. You can look back on how you handled the ending with pride rather than with regret. This self-respect supports your healing and your sense of yourself as strong, capable person who can handle difficult situations with grace. While protecting you in all these ways, playing the long game simultaneously maximizes the avoidance regret by creating conditions where the impact of losing you grows over time rather than fading. The immediate impact of strategic rejection might be less dramatic than emotional rejection. You're not giving them the big emotional scene that drives home how much they've hurt you. But strategic rejection sets up dynamic where the impact compounds over time. Initially, they might feel relief that you left without drama. But as time passes, as they observe your thriving, as they recognize your complete unavailability, as they compare others to you and find everyone lacking, the full weight of what they lost begins to sink in. The regret grows rather than fading because your visible thriving keeps proving that you're better off without them, that you don't need them, that they were the problem. This growing regret is far more powerful than immediate pain that fades with time. Playing the long game maximizes their regret by denying them the comfort of believing you were too emotional or too invested, forcing them to confront that you were strong enough to walk away because their behavior was unacceptable. If you leave emotionally, they can tell themselves you left because you couldn't handle the relationship, because you were too needy or too demanding, because you overreacted. These narratives protect their ego and minimize their responsibility. But strategic rejection denies them these narratives. You didn't leave because you were too emotional. You left because you were strong enough to recognize that their patterns were unacceptable and you deserved better. This recognition that you left from strength rather than from weakness is harder for them to dismiss and creates deeper regret because it places responsibility squarely on them and their patterns. Playing the long game maximizes their regret by demonstrating over time that you're not just surviving without them, but genuinely thriving, proving that their absence improved your life rather than diminishing it. The avoidant might hope or expect that you'll struggle without them, that you'll miss them terribly, that losing them will negatively affect your life. This hope, if confirmed, would ease their guilt and would validate their importance. But when they observe you thriving, being happy, achieving goals, possibly finding healthier relationship, it proves the opposite. You're better off without them. Their presence in your life was limiting you rather than enriching you. This proof that you don't need them and are actually better without them creates profound regret because it makes clear that they weren't the prize they thought they were, that you could have had good life with them if they'd been capable, but you're having even better life without them. Playing the long game maximizes their regret by ensuring that when they eventually seek to reconnect or to test if you're still available, they encounter absolute unavailability that makes permanent loss undeniable. Many avoidants eventually reach out after some time has passed, testing whether the door is still open, whether you'd be receptive to reconnection. If you respond to these reach-outs, if you engage or entertain possibility of reconciliation, you reduce their regret by showing them you're still available as option. But if you maintain absolute unavailability, if you don't respond or respond only to make clear you're not interested, you force them to confront that they've truly lost you permanently. This recognition of permanent loss is what creates the deepest regret because it removes all hope, all possibility, all chance to undo their mistake. What the long game looks like in practice. Understanding the long game strategically is important, but knowing what it actually looks like in practice, how you behave day to day, what choices you make, how you handle specific situations, is essential for successful implementation of strategic rejection that protects you and creates lasting impact. The long game looks like ending the relationship with brief, calm conversation that makes your decision clear without providing detailed explanation or engaging in lengthy discussion. When you're ready to end things, you communicate your decision simply and clearly. I've realized this relationship isn't working for me, and I've decided to end it. I wish you well, but I need to move forward separately. You don't elaborate on all the ways they hurt you unless they press for reasons, and even then, you keep it brief. Our patterns aren't compatible, or I need more consistency than this relationship provides. You don't accept their attempts to discuss or debate your decision. You state it, and you end the conversation. This brevity and clarity is the beginning of the long game. You're not giving them anything to argue with or anything to use to keep you engaged. The long game looks like implementing complete no contact immediately after the ending conversation and maintaining it absolutely regardless of their attempts to reach you. You block them on all social media platforms. You block their number, or you don't respond to their messages if blocking isn't possible. You tell mutual friends that you're not interested in hearing about them or discussing them. You remove or hide anything in your living space that reminds you of them. You create total separation that allows you to begin healing without ongoing reminders or ongoing temptation to break your boundary. When they reach out, and they likely will, you don't respond. Not to their apologies, not to their expressions of regret, not to their questions about closure. Silence is your only response. The long game looks like redirecting all the energy you were investing in the relationship toward yourself, toward your healing, toward your goals and your growth. You invest in therapy if you have access to it. You spend time with friends and family who support you. You pursue hobbies or activities that bring you joy. You work on goals that matter to you. You read books about healing and attachment. You do the internal work of processing what happened and understanding your own patterns that contributed to choosing unavailable partner. All the emotional energy, all the mental space, all the time you were devoting to understanding them and trying to make the relationship work, now gets devoted to yourself and to building a life that feels good and that doesn't require anyone else to complete it. The long game looks like living your life visibly in ways that demonstrate you're thriving if you're comfortable with this, or living your life privately in ways that create genuine happiness, regardless of whether they can see it. If you're someone who naturally shares your life on social media, continue doing so. Post about your activities, your achievements, your happiness. If you're not naturally public about your life, that's fine too. Live well privately, focus on genuine healing and happiness, rather than on creating appearance of thriving. The key is that your focus is on actually building good life, rather than on performing for their benefit. If they happen to see evidence of your thriving, that serves the long game. But your thriving is primarily for you, not for them. The long game looks like treating yourself with compassion and patience during the difficult early period of healing while maintaining absolute commitment to your boundaries. You'll have hard days. You'll miss them. You'll be tempted to reach out or to respond to their reach outs. This is normal, and it doesn't mean you're failing. The long game includes being kind to yourself during these moments while still maintaining your boundaries. When you're tempted to break no contact, you talk to a friend. You journal. You remind yourself why you left. You sit with the discomfort until it passes. You don't act on the temptation. Consistency in maintaining your boundaries, even when it's difficult, is what makes the long game work. The long game looks like handling any necessary contact in shared spaces with polite distance that demonstrates you've moved on emotionally. If you encounter them at social event or through mutual friends, you acknowledge them politely but briefly. Hello, and perhaps brief small talk if necessary, but you don't engage in meaningful conversation. You don't show anger or coldness that would reveal they still affect you. You simply treat them like acquaintance you don't know well, polite, distant, unbothered. This demonstration of genuine indifference is more powerful than showing them you're still hurt or angry. The long game looks like absolute refusal to engage with their attempts at reconciliation, regardless of how appealing those attempts might be. They might apologize beautifully. They might claim they're in therapy and working on their patterns. They might tell you they've realized what they lost and they want another chance. The long game means you don't engage with any of this. You don't test whether they've really changed. You don't give them opportunity to prove they're different. You maintain your boundary that the relationship is over permanently. You can wish them well in their growth while making clear that growth doesn't include another chance with you. The long game looks like eventually reaching genuine indifference where you're not thinking about them, not checking on them, not organizing your choices around them, simply living your life as if they never existed. This is the ultimate goal of the long game, not to make them regret, though that's likely consequence, but to genuinely free yourself from the relationship and from them. When you've reached this point, when you truly don't care whether they regret losing you or what they're doing or who they're with, you've won. Not because you've hurt them back, but because you've freed yourself completely. The long game, ultimately, is about recognizing that the best rejection of someone who couldn't value you is living well without them, becoming the person you're meant to be without their limitations holding you back, and demonstrating through your life, rather than through your words, that you're better off without them. They'll carry the regret as they watch you from distance, thriving in ways you couldn't thrive while managing their patterns. They'll recognize too late that they had someone valuable who they couldn't appreciate. And you'll be too busy living your life, too focused on your own happiness, too invested in your own future to care about their regret, because you've moved so far beyond them that their recognition of their loss is simply irrelevant to the beautiful life you've built without them.